If I knew what to expect before I started learning Spanish, I would have enjoyed learning Spanish more. I would have been less stressed out. I would have had less insecurities, and I would have learned a lot more and a lot faster. One thing I wish I knew before learning Spanish is what fluency actually meant. In my eyes, just a few years ago, fluency meant perfection. I thought that I was going to be able to understand native Spanish speakers 100% of the time. I thought that I was going to be speaking without making any mistakes at all. I thought that I was going to be able to speak as fast as Spanish speakers that I would hear on telenovelas. I thought that I was going to be able to comprehend everything that I read in Spanish 100% of the time. Having this perspective on fluency gave me a lot of issues. It turns out none of those things are true because perfection does not exist. Native Spanish speakers make mistakes when they speak Spanish, and that's something that I was not focusing on at all. The only thing that was going through my head was never making a mistake. Since I could not speak perfectly and I couldn't understand Spanish speakers all the time, I thought that there was something wrong with me. I always thought to myself, why am I not fluent yet? Am I just wasting my time studying Spanish so much? Or maybe I just wasn't smart enough and I was never going to become fluent. This perspective on fluency also made me burn out. I thought I could just study a lot harder and for a lot longer, and then eventually I was going to become fluent. That was not the best strategy at all. I exhausted myself and I lost confidence in myself, and even Spanish wasn't as fun as it used to be. Another thing I wish I knew before learning Spanish is that I shouldn't be using too many resources all at the same time. Using too many resources all at the same time made me very overwhelmed, especially because when I first started to learn Spanish on my own, I did not have an actual language learning plan. I didn't really know what I was doing. So I just thought I would study everything. And that was not the best idea either, because I would have so many websites open for learning Spanish and I didn't really know which one I should be starting with. And it was just all very confusing. Basically, I was not organized and I had information overload. What I should have done was just choose a few other resources that were available to me and analyze them to see if I liked them or not and if they were helping me progress. I also wish I knew that the resources that I would use to learn Spanish could change over time. When I first started to learn Spanish on my own after school, I would use a lot of flashcards to learn new vocabulary, but now I don't ever do that for learning Spanish. But before this transition happened, it took me a while to actually stop using the flashcards because I was forcing myself to use the flashcards even though I was really bored of them. I was thinking that I know flashcards are very useful for me and I've used them a lot in the past. That means I need to continue to use flashcards for as long as possible. But that wasn't the case at all. I could change it up a little bit and learn Spanish vocabulary with other methods. And the same thing happened with how I used to learn Spanish grammar. So in college, I would always just study a lot of the grammar rules and I would do the grammar worksheets and things like that. So I continued to use this same method after I graduated college, and it was incredibly boring to me. But I tried to force myself to do that, and it really just sucked the fun out of learning Spanish because I just didn't like that feeling that I was still in school. But eventually, I did come to that realization that I can learn grammar in many different ways. I can read and learn grammar. I can have conversations with native Spanish speakers and learn grammar as well. On a similar note, I wish I knew how many different ways that there were to learn Spanish. I didn't have to learn Spanish the same way that I learned it when I was in school. So I didn't have to write short essays that were just from a topic from a textbook. I didn't have to study grammar exercises all day long. I didn't have to take any more Spanish examinations or quizzes. I could learn Spanish by watching movies and TV shows, by speaking with native Spanish speakers, by playing video games in Spanish, by interpreting and translating, by reading Spanish books and Spanish content on the internet. Those are just a few ways to learn Spanish. There are even more. It took me a while to really understand this, but when I made that transition from the more traditional way of learning Spanish to all these new ways that I was learning of how to learn Spanish, I became more passionate about learning Spanish because I really enjoy the process of learning the language. I wish I knew how to face my fears and my insecurities as a Spanish learner. The biggest issue with having so many insecurities and fear is that it really prevented me from wanting to learn Spanish and reach my language learning goals. I missed out on many opportunities to learn Spanish. For example, I had the fear of speaking Spanish with native Spanish speakers. I had a fear of making mistakes. I had a fear that I was going to be judged by these native Spanish speakers that I would be talking to. I had a fear that I was going to be able to fit in with the Spanish speakers that I was talking to. I had the fear that my fellow language learners would think that I was a fraud because I couldn't speak Spanish perfectly. I had a fear that if I spoke Spanish that I would be misunderstood and even offend someone. I also feared being perceived as stupid because I would make mistakes when I spoke Spanish. The main way to overcome this fear and insecurity was very simple. I just had to change my mentality. I had to accept the fact that I wasn't going to improve my speaking skills if I actually did not speak with Spanish speakers and make many mistakes so they could correct them. That was a part of the process. It was really normal to make mistakes. As well, the more conversations that I would have, I would feel more comfortable and that fear of speaking Spanish would go away. Because every time that I did have conversations with Spanish speakers, it was a very fun time. I loved having conversations with Spanish speakers, even though I was making many mistakes. So that joy that I had during my conversations really masked all those insecurities and all those fears. Also, when I started having conversations, I realized that the Spanish speakers that I was speaking with, they weren't making fun of me. They didn't think I was stupid because I would make mistakes. They were very encouraging. They would always help me if I mispronounced something incorrectly or if I had any questions about some definitions of words or phrases or anything like that at all. They were always very helpful. I wish I knew just how different Spanish was spoken in different Spanish-speaking countries. I find it a little bit hard to describe just how stressed out I was when I went to the Dominican Republic for the first time in 2021. Because when I got there, right, I didn't know anything about Dominican culture, about the dialect of Spanish that was spoken there, about the music, the culture. I think I said culture already, but really anything about the Dominican Republic. So when I got there, I definitely had some culture shock, and I was really shocked at the fact that I could not really understand anybody that I was talking to. It was really strange. It seemed like the Spanish that was spoken there was an alien language because it was so different from the Spanish that I was used to. It also felt like I was discovering a new way of expressing myself in Spanish as well because I felt like I had a different personality. I had a different flow when I started to speak Spanish like Dominicans. I also wish I knew just how long it would take to learn a new dialect of the Spanish language and to develop an accent because this was something that was not going to happen overnight. And this was also another reason why I was so stressed when I was in the Dominican Republic because I wanted to sound more Dominican. I wanted to imitate their accent, but I couldn't. And of course, it's kind of ridiculous to think that I would be able to if I never visited the country before, if I didn't know anything about Dominican culture. So I would have been a lot less stressed out. I would have been less insecure if I had this understanding. I mean, it takes months upon months just to get basic comprehension of new words and phrases in a particular Spanish-speaking country. And then the accent, that's like a whole nother story right there of how long that takes to develop as well. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and a little bit of passion as well. These are just a few things that I wish I learned before learning Spanish. And I think that they can help you too, again, to help you not be as stressed during your Spanish learning journey. And so you can have a lot more fun and so that you can learn a lot faster as well. If you haven't started learning Spanish yet, let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions. And for those who are already learning Spanish, let me know in the comment section below what do you wish you knew before learning Spanish. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you share it with one of your language learning friends.